All right, and we're live. I really apologize. Thank you guys for hanging in there. I know it was a little bit of a delay there. We did have Justin bailed right at the last minute, so we had to kind of scramble a little bit to try to get everything situated and kind of prepare for doing this solo. So, 1 second. Anyways, so today we're going to talk about the future of cruising. So a lot of that's really up in the air right now, especially with everything going on. And cruises are still being canceled. Things are still, but it also looks good in a way. There's a little bit of positive news coming around. Anyways, so just kind of look through the chat here. Say hey to everybody. I see Cruise Pulse. We got Tyler. Illusion Toast is here. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out. And again, thank you guys for waiting. I know it was a little late. Anyways. Hey, I see you made it. You missed, you're not, you didn't miss out this time, Alk. Alk 61695. I see you made it this time. Good to see everybody again. Hey, Jeremy. Hey, Susie. All right, so again, we're going to talk about, everything going on in the cruise industry right now. And even though there's really not a lot actively happening, there's still a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So anyways, so first we're going to talk about, Carnival's, again, most of you probably know that Carnival announced that there's going to be some cancellations over the next, there was over the last week. You had 4 ships get canceled through the spring. I know a lot of the headlines in the news was like, oh, Carnival canceled through spring, and that's really not true. I think P&O canceled a little bit further ahead, which is technically Carnival, but it's not Carnival Cruise Line like everybody kind of was made out to think it is. But Carnival is still, from what we know, is going to set sail in November. From what we know, it's not technically official, but according to their website, they do have 6 ships that are in place to be sailing in November, which is really, really positive to see. Now, even if it is, still unofficial, it's still something that we can kind of keep our eye on. I know I personally am not. I would say I'm very optimistic and I'm very hopeful for November, but I'm more confident in the December startup. It looks like, again, some of these cruise lines might be getting some crew aligned in place in order for a startup maybe within the next few months, which is really, really exciting to see. All right, I see we got more people in the chat here. Oh, there's no football today. All right, and again, but the ships that are somewhat in place to sail in November are going to be we've got ships in Port Canaveral, and we've also got ships in Miami. Port of Miami is going to have the Carnival Sunrise, the Carnival Conquest, and the Carnival Horizon. Looks like the Conquest and the Sunrise are probably going to be doing a little bit shorter cruises as of right now. This is all, again, based off of what we see right now. Who knows what's going to change in the near future. Carnival Horizon looks like they're going to be sailing week-long cruises, and that's going to be the case for, we're going to have the Carnival Elation and the Carnival Liberty doing the shorter cruises, it looks like, in Port Canaveral, and then we're going to have the Breeze starting up, doing the week-long cruises and the longer cruises out of Port Canaveral as well. So 2 ports, 6 ships, we got 3 in each. So again, some news, or at least, the fact that there's no bad news is kind of good news at this point. It's just kind of the way everything is going right now. But also, we want to touch on Carnival also selling a lot of their ships. So they also announced this week that they're going to be increasing the number of ships that are going to be sold up to 18. There'll be 18 ships sold. It used to be 13, and then earlier this week, they did announce that they're going to up that a little bit. So the ships that we do know that are going to be sold, we have 4 ships out of the Carnival Fantasy class, which is very upsetting to see. We do have the Fantasy, the Inspiration, that have been at the scrapyard for a few weeks now. Carnival Imagination arrived there in the scrapyard earlier this week as well, which is very sad to see. And then we also had Carnival announce that officially the Fascination has been sold. They didn't say who they sold it to or if they sold it to the scrapyard as well. So we'll probably hear a little bit more about that, but I would say if 3 of the 4 have been going to scrap, I could probably say that maybe we'll see her go to the scrapyard as well. Who knows, though? We also got 4 ships from Holland America Line. We had the Maasdam, the Amsterdam, the Rotterdam, and the Veendam. So the Maasdam went to Sea Jets, which is actually it went to a Mediterranean company. It's a very small ferry company from what I believe. It wasn't Sea Jets. But it wasn't sold for scrap, which is always good to see. The Amsterdam and the Rotterdam were both sold to Fred Olsen. So those 2 ships are going to be sailing for Fred Olsen very soon. And also Veendam was sold to the same company as the Maasdam. Costa Victoria was sold for scrap, which is very sad to see. Fun fact for you guys, the Norwegian Sky and the Sun ships, those are both actually sister ships to the Costa Victoria. Those were both originally Costa ships, and halfway through the construction, actually Norwegian took over on those. So that's really, really cool. But sad to see her go. You got the Neo Romantica from Costa that she went to Celestial Cruises. She's now named the Celestial Experience. And let's see. Oceana went to Sea Jets. She's the only one that's gone to Sea Jets so far. Then you got Sun Princess and the Sky Princess. Was it the Sky Princess? No, the Sea Princess and the Sun Princess were both sold earlier this week. It is believed that the Sun Princess is going to go to Peace Boat, which is the current operator of the former Carnival Tropical, and another ship. I don't know the exact name. I want to say it's the old Zenith. But so what Peace Boat is going to do is they're going to take those 2 smaller ships, they're going to phase those out, and they're going to go into the Sun Princess, which is going to be 1 larger ship instead of operating 2 small ships, which is really cool to see. And unknown for wherever the Sea Princess is going to go, we also have Costa Mediterranean and the Atlantica. They're technically leaving, or they've technically been sold, although they are going to a Chinese a joint venture company with a Chinese shipping company and Carnival Corporation. So they aren't 100% leaving the Carnival Corporation fleet, but they are being sold to a Chinese shipping company. All right. Let's see. Tyler notices the Royal Caribbean shirt. Thank you very much. My parents got this for me on the Mariner of the Seas. Let's see. If P&O Costa starts sailing, this is kind of a good sign for Carnival, in my opinion. I definitely agree. Like I said, I think Carnival restarting, at least in I would say U.S. cruising in general, is probably very, very soon. I think as long as we can get past the CDC, then we're good. That's also the hard part, is getting past the CDC at this point, because, I think we know what we can do in order to do it. I mean, we've clearly seen all that going on with MSC and Costa. Actually, Costa Diadema started up earlier this week, or actually just yesterday. But I think with what we're seeing in Europe is very, very positive. I think if the CDC actually pays attention to that and realizes, yeah, we can do the same thing here in the US, then I don't see a problem. But sometimes the CDC is just kind of, it seems like they've pushed the cruise line industries off to the side. Like, they're really not willing to work with them sometimes. And like somebody else said in the chat here, if we can fly, we should be able to cruise. I know at first, there were social distancing guidelines on flights and stuff like that. There's testing. At first there was social distancing where it was like every other row, 1 person per row, stuff like that. And then it slowly started to fill in. And then all of a sudden now we have full flights. And, and like Frank Del Rio said with the CEO of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, he's actually said pretty much, he said, enough is enough. We're ready to start cruising again. We need to operate our business. And he also said, if you can sit 6 inches apart from somebody on a plane, then we should be allowed to cruise. And I mean, he's not wrong. He's got a good point there. Let's see. Spaz asked if the Empress and Majesty of the Seas will be sold off for scrap. So far, no. There's been a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors about that. Or not Norwegian. Royal Caribbean has actually been pretty quick to shut that rumor down. I think multiple times. So even though Empress and Majesty are some of the older ships, you've got the Monarch and the Sovereign are both being scrapped right now, which are the sisters to the Majesty. And then Empress of the Seas just being so small and so old, it's kind of like she'd probably be the first to go. But as of right now, Royal Caribbean's pretty quick to, shut down the rumors saying that, Empress and Majesty are going. So it's good to see that they're hanging on to ships. They're also hanging on to Grandeur of the Seas. She was originally sold to Pullmantur last year, but because of Pullmantur filing for bankruptcy earlier, just about a month or two ago, Royal Caribbean decided to keep the ship, and then they also announced that they're going to keep the ship. Now, whether she stays up in Baltimore, where she's currently or was currently homeported, and Enchantment does something else, or Enchantment still goes up to Baltimore to replace her, that's still all up in the air. But it's really good to see that Grandeur of the Seas is still going to stay within the Royal Caribbean fleet, even though she was previously sold, but now they're keeping her. Let's see what else we got here in the chat. Too bad Seaside will only be in Port Canaveral for a few months, but November 2021 we are getting the Royal Caribbean Independence. I'm very excited to see Seaside and MSC in general in Port Canaveral. I haven't been to Port Canaveral in so long. It's like I want to do some ship spotting out of there, but there's just nothing there, and traveling is just not a thing right now. But I'm definitely excited to see MSC in Port Canaveral because it's very big and very different for them. And I think they're still going to put something in Miami too, so that means they're going to put multiple ships out there as well. Let's see, what other... George asks, what is my favorite cruise line? Despite my Royal Caribbean t-shirt that I've got on right now, it's a very hard question, especially for, it's hard for me to kind of pick. I think I like each one for their own specific thing. And I think that's also, what makes the decision hard to figure out, what is my actual favorite cruise line. I love Norwegian just because I think they're very, very much like an all-around cruise line. They have pretty much everything to offer from, their smaller ships, their Jewel and Star class ships. They're very old school, traditional type of cruising feel to them. And then you've also got the new style of the mega ships with go-karts, ropes courses, laser tag, all kinds of stuff like that. So I think Norwegian is a very all-around. They've got great ships and incredible ships. I love the Breakaway Plus class ships. I did the inaugural Panama Canal cruise on the Norwegian Bliss. By far my favorite cruise ever, and it was amazing. I love that ship so much. But I do like Royal Caribbean, though, because of pretty much just what they do with their ships. They're the most technologically advanced ships in the world. They're the largest ships in the world. Wonder of the Seas, Symphony of the Seas, the largest ships in the world. They're insane. They're huge. And they've got laser tag. They've got the Ultimate Abyss. They got the 2 flow riders. They've got everything. And then you got the Quantum class that's just completely revolutionary. And then you've also got Carnival Cruise Line, which, they're starting to get into that mega ship territory now with the Mardi Gras, which is, actually looks to almost be ready for sea trials. She's actually updated on the sea maps, or all the ship trackers, which means that she's got all her navigation gear in, which is really cool to see. So sea trials might be starting for that pretty soon. But I've also cruised the most with Carnival, so I think that's why I'm a little biased towards them a little bit. They are on the cheaper side of cruising, and that's probably because that's part of the reason why I go on them more, is because, sometimes you just want to get away. You want to just something cheap and just to get away a little bit. So overall, and plus I love the Vista class ships. Dream class ships are so nice. So it's kind of a tie between all three of them, but I think all around, I think Norwegian does it best. But I am very picky, or not picky, but I do like a lot of things about each one. And I think actually me and a lot of family members have even said, if we could take each thing we love about each of the 3 cruise lines it would be like we could probably build the most amazing cruise line ever. You know, you take the just the experience of being on Norwegian, put that on top of a Norwegian, you know, or not a Norwegian, a Royal Caribbean like Oasis or Quantum class ship, and then you throw in, you know, the fun aspect of Carnival, and I think you've got probably the greatest cruise line ever. So, but I love all three cruise lines, and it's hard. It's very hard, but I guess all around, I'd probably pick Norwegian, even though I've sailed with Carnival over 20 times. I think 23 times already. What other questions we got here? Illusion Toast. In my opinion, it's not fair that the CDC is resuming, or yeah, cruising slowly in other countries, but not here in the U.S. Yeah, I think part of it is, you know, the whole things have to get better here, and I think things are getting better here, and that's why it's starting to become a little more promising. But at the same time, I mean, this issue still exists, so we still have to keep that in mind. So, and I do like playing devil's advocate with myself a little bit, because I see one side, but I try to see the other side as well, just to kind of gauge the situation, to kind of see where everything is coming from. But I do agree that I think the CDC needs to treat a little more fairly and pay a little more attention to the cruise lines a little bit. But we had two Florida senators. I think it was Marco Rubio and Rick Scott did announce a plan, or, you know, a bill that they're going to try to pass through in order to. It's called the Set Sail Safely Act, and it's kind of a way of bypassing the CDC, which sounds really great, and it sounds really exciting, and it makes you again more hopeful for the cruise lines to start up. And I really hope, you know, it starts to go through. I think my only concern with it is that I think part of the bill is that so many different agencies and so many different groups are going to be on this committee, and we're going to have all of them agree on something in order to start sailing again. And I think, you know, nobody can ever agree on anything, especially these days. So, you know, that's kind of my only concern with it. And I also feel like it's kind of strange how the airline industries can go back, which I'm not saying that negatively towards the airline industries, because I love the airlines. I know flying is probably one of the most important parts of cruising, is because most people fly to get there. And again, you know, flying is essential not only for businesses, just for all around. But I do think if, you know, people are able to fly 6 inches from each other, I think, you know, you should be able to cruise. But, you know, if huge government agencies aren't regulating the airline industries or any other real industries, everything can open back up except for the cruise line. Cruise lines have to have, you know, an entire government agency or an entire like legislation pretty much opened up, or not opened up, but, you know, created for it just to resume operations. I think that's a little strange, and I don't really know if that's necessarily fair. Although if that's what gets us cruising, then I think that's what we're gonna have to do. Let's see what other questions we got here in the chat. How many cruises have I been on? I've been on 35 cruises. I started cruising in 1998 on the Celebrity Century. I know one of you guys commented on a video recently saying that the Century in 1998 was one of your first cruises too, so it was really cool. But yeah, my first cruise is 1998. I was like 2 years old on the Celebrity Century, and after that, I did the 2 Disney ships like for their inaugural seasons, which was really cool. But I was kind of too young to remember that. But I have been on 35 cruises. I've sailed in Carnival alone 23 times. Done Costa once, Norwegian 4 times. Let's see, what else have I done? I did Disney twice, very long time ago. Celebrity 3 times. But the last time I've been on Celebrity was, I think last time I was on Celebrity was probably 2005, 2006 on the Celebrity Zenith, which the Zenith hasn't been in the Celebrity fleet for probably at least 10 years now. So it's been a very, very long time since I've been with them. But I was looking at going into the Apex maybe in in February, hopefully. So we'll see how all that goes. But anyways, yeah, I've been on quite a few ships, and it's been killing me the fact that I haven't been on a ship in well over a year now. I did a ship tour on the Carnival Conquest back in October, so it's coming up on a year even just being in front of a cruise ship and even seeing one in person. Let's see. Is Virgin Voyages building a private port in Miami? Heard they're building at it, Terminal H. Yes. So actually, funny story. I was gonna do an entire video, and let me know in the chat here if you guys would still like to see that. Like right before all the shutdowns started, I had an entire video ready to go pretty much, and it was talking about all like the port expansion projects that are going on in the Port of Miami, and it talked about Virgin's terminal that they're building down there. It's going to be kind of in the turning basin. I don't know if maybe the Bimini Express, if that rings a bell to any of you guys, used to sail out of Miami a lot, or every now and then, but she kind of sat like on the back corner, like kind of tucked into the side of the turning basin, and that's actually where Terminal H is, and that's where the Virgin Voyages terminal is going to be. Although they are going to rename it to Terminal V because Virgin Voyages. But yeah, they are building their own, and it looks really, really cool. But yeah, if you guys would like to see that video kind of talking about what's going on with all like MSC's new terminal, you got the Norwegian Cruise Line's Terminal B has actually been handed over to them. They officially like own that now. Carnival's got upgrading a terminal pretty soon, and then Virgin as well. I know Disney's got plans for something on the opposite side of the port as well. So Virgin Voyages is doing a terminal back down there, and it's gonna rename it to Terminal V, which is really cool, which kind of makes sense. Let's see. The Ocean Channel 2, what is the best older style cruise ship? So I would say I'd probably go with maybe the Fantasy class. I really don't have a lot of experience on the older style ships. It's been probably a lot longer than anything else that I've been on an older ship. But I do love, I have sailed on the Fantasy class 3 times. I've been on the Sensation twice and the Imagination once, which is really, really cool. I now that the Imagination's been scrapped, it's really cool to say, I've been on that ship. I can't really speak for Royal Caribbean too much because I haven't been on one of their smaller ships yet. Excuse me. I did sail on Norwegian Sky. I don't remember it too much. It was a very, very short 3-day weekend cruise, back when I was in middle school. But I did enjoy it though. It was a very, very pretty ship. I did like the Norwegian Sky. So I would say anything that really lays in between the whole, I would say maybe 70 to 80 to 90,000 ton range. I really do enjoy the Spirit class. Spirit class are beautiful, beautiful ships. I sailed on a week-long cruise out of Tampa on the Carnival Legend almost, I guess, 9 years ago now, so it's been a while. But I did do a ship tour as well on the Miracle when she was still in Tampa, and she is such a pretty ship. She didn't have any of the upgrades yet, but she did just recently get those. I think now, finally, that she's got those, all the Carnival ships have been redone. They have all the Geisbergers, all the upgrades, all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool to see. But I do really love the Spirit class ships as well from Carnival. They're really good in between too. Let's see. Wendy, also from Carnival Cruise Lines, they are selling off some of P&O Australia's 2 former ships, Dawn and Aria. P&O Australia are going to get the Pacific Adventure, which is the Golden Princess. Yes, so Dawn and Aria were sold to CMV, Cruise Maritime Voyages. They are a British cruise company, but as most of you may have seen recently, that CMV has gone into administration, so all of their ships are actually up for auction. But Dawn and Aria were not sold or transferred yet, so I think they're still with the P&O fleet, but I think they've still also been sold. So I'm not too sure. I don't think they quite know what they're going to do with the ships yet, but they're still technically been sold. But yeah, and then the Golden Princess turning into Pacific Adventure was part of the Carnival Panorama Splendor swap type of deal that they did. because originally P&O Australia was originally Carnival Panorama was for P&O Australia, and then kind of like probably right before they started building the ship, they're like, we probably can't fill up this ship. It's probably a little bit too big for us right now. So they made a deal with Carnival. They're like, hey, if we give you this third Vista class ship, can we have Splendor? And they're like, oh yeah, let's do it. Splendor's a little bit an oddball because she's been like sold, or well, she was originally built for Costa. I think Carnival's like, oh wait, we want her. And so she came into Carnival, and then, she's kind of been all over the place with Carnival, and then, she was sold to P&O, and then all of a sudden they're like, actually, we're going to keep Carnival Splendor, and Princess is going to give P&O Australia their Golden Princess. So yeah, I think Golden Princess is still going to be Pacific Adventure. I think that's still going to go through. I believe that was supposed to go through, I think, early, maybe in the spring of 2021, even though, the whole process of, getting Panorama and the Splendor was already, been around for a while now. Marilyn asks, do you think we're going to have to wear masks on the Mardi Gras in June 2021? In June, I really hope not. I definitely think that, well, for sure the masks are going to be a thing whenever cruising first starts back up, but I think June 2021 is still pretty far out there. So who really knows how the situation is going to be? But from what I'm hearing, honestly, that people aren't minding the masks too much. I think people seem to be really happy on MSC and on Costa so far that, because you don't have to wear them on outdoor decks. You only have to wear them inside the ship. So say you're walking through the lobby or the atrium, you're walking through the gift shops, then you'd have to wear your mask. But if you're out hanging by the pool deck, hanging out on the lounge chair, hanging out in the pool or anything like that, you don't have to wear a mask. Well, right now for Costa and MSC. So that's kind of a plus side to all of this is not all places you have to wear a mask. I think it definitely could get hot in the Caribbean with a mask on in the middle of summer. I would say I hope not for June. I hope we're a little bit further past this. But from what I'm hearing, it's not as bad as it sounds. But I definitely think, wearing a mask probably would kind of take away from it a little bit. But I would say hopefully not. Tyler says, I think NCL is heading into the luxury cruise line market as NCLH and other brands already. Yeah, NCL is they're kind of weird how they do things. They're like a little bit more of a premium style, but at the same time they attract very young crowds, which is, again, part of why Norwegian is so great is I think they kind of offer that luxurious cruise feel and the exclusivity and I think kind of an elite feel like cruising used to be way back in like the early 2000s, late 90s. But at the same time, they're appealing to people like my age. I mean, they have go-karts on their ships. They're not, I mean, I wouldn't expect an older crowd, being drawn to Norwegian because of go-karts. But at the same time, Norwegian also appeals to that older generation by their Dawn and their Star class, or not the Dawn class, the Jewel class and the Star class, because they're very more traditional cruising and just very smaller. But again, I think that's part of why NCL is just so great all around. I wonder if in a few years Virgin will move the ship up to Port Canaveral. Let's see. Richard Brunson. Train will stop at Cocoa Beach, so it's super convenient for the cruise line. That'd be really cool to see. I know they've got the Scarlet Lady that's out right now, or she's finished. She's not technically out. Valiant Lady's coming out next year. Valiant Lady's actually going to stay in the Mediterranean. But they do have a third and fourth ship that are still on order. And as far as I know, they're not on time, but hopefully on time. But they're still building the third and fourth ship. Virgin is blowing my mind for a cruise line that launched their very first ship that they built from scratch in the middle of a pandemic or the beginning of a pandemic. is just mind blowing to me, and the fact that they're still running so strongly. Even though I know Richard Branson is like extremely wealthy, so it's probably like yeah, this kind of stinks, but we're fine. But I know they do have a third and fourth ship on order. Although I think he's talked about wanting to send one up to Northern Europe, and I think he wants another one in Australia. So I think Virgin Voyages may end up in Australia for a little bit too. So, but that's a really good point about putting them in Port Canaveral, because I know they are running that train system pretty soon. So it'd be really cool to see. Let's see, how much private islands does Carnival own? I know they have. So they have Princess Cay, that's owned by Princess, but Princess is owned by Carnival. They've got Half Moon Cay, which is Holland America's island. I know they've been trying to develop something in the maybe not Dominican Republic, but Haiti, I believe. Somewhere around, kind of like their version of Labadee. And then I think Grand Turk is technically their private island, but I think it's still also under regulations from Turks and Caicos, which is why actually the travel ban for Turks and Caicos is until like beginning of 2021. Which does bring up another good point that I have here, is that when these cruise lines do start up, it's going to be kind of strange how they do things for the most part, because I know that the Bahamas are still going to be roughly, they're starting to, I think they said phase 4 of their reopening plan is when they're going to allow cruise ships, so maybe not right off the bat they're going to allow cruise ships. So although they are in stage 4, so who knows how they're going to do things like that. But I know there are a couple, like I think it was the Virgin Islands or maybe St. Kitts or something like that. A lot of the smaller little islands like on the Eastern Caribbean are starting to open up a little bit to cruise lines, but who really knows? I mean, there's still, you could pull up in port, like ports were whenever this all started. You could pull up in a port and be like, no, we're good. Somebody sneezed, so out. And I think Grand Turk actually pulled that on Carnival one time, and they weren't too happy about that. So I think another challenge is, again, trying to make sure there's islands to go to, because cruises to nowhere aren't a thing in the U.S., unfortunately, which is why it's so successful for MSC and Costa right now, is because you can stay within Italy. They can cruise. They don't have to do any international traveling with the cruises that they do. So Grandiosa, Magnifica, whenever she got put off for another month, but Costa Diadema, the Deliziosa, those are all able to stay within Italy if they needed to, and I think most of them are. I know the issues with the Magnifica is because they were trying to go to Greece a little bit, and I think there was a little more extra protocols, and then people were like, I'm out. Sorry. I don't want to do that. So I think international travel is a hard thing for the U.S., and I think that's another challenge for the cruise line industry over here, because we can't really do cruises to nowhere because it's not allowed. The Jones Act that we have pretty much prevents that, and pretty much what the Jones Act is, and I think I've talked about it a little bit here and there on the channel, is that unless the ship is flagged in the U.S., it has to visit at least one foreign port before returning to the U.S. So that's why the Pride of America can circle the Hawaiian Islands no problem by itself, doesn't have to go anywhere, because she is literally the only cruise ship flagged for the U.S. But, there's a lot of regulation that goes along with that, which is why a lot of cruise ships don't do that. So I think, again, the international travel is going to be a little bit tougher for us. So we're going to have to make sure there's at least a few places to go. So I think shorter cruises are definitely going to be what start up first. So, like I said, I think Carnival is going to start up the Liberty, the Elation, the Sunrise, and the Conquest are going to be their shorter cruises, and I think those will probably be the first to go. Because maybe whenever the Bahamas do open up, or maybe they can work something out with at least the private islands to where they can open up those to go to at least, for 3-4 days. So that is also another thing to keep in mind. So let's see. What I think Royal Caribbean is trying to get more ships into the Coco Cay area. Yeah, I think they're going to try to put as many ships as possible into there at some point. I mean, they're they're already putting two very, very large ships in there. I think right before this all started, they actually had, I think the Allure and the Harmony were supposed to dock in Coco Cay together right before this all ended or started. And I know Symphony and Oasis actually docked there together right before all this started, even though I think that was, those two ships were chartered out for Chick-fil-A like operators from what I heard. But yeah, I haven't been to Coco Cay yet, but I'd love to, and I like that how much they've actually put into their effort they've put into their private islands. I really hope, you know, other cruise lines maybe do something comparable to that. I know they're trying to do like a perfect day, a variant of that in the South Pacific. It's somewhere, I forgot what island it was, but yeah, that is another really good thing. I think if Caribbean could at least say, hey, can we just go to Coco Cay? That's a really big advantage for them. And I think as well as Carnival saying, hey, can we send like a ship to, you know, Half Moon, or can we send somebody to Princess Key? That'd be a great idea too. And hopefully the Bahamas government can, you know, work with them on something like that too if things aren't still opened yet. Let's see. What are the plans as far as a job? Is it a cruise job or a regular? Cruise job or regular, and cruise as much as possible. So yeah, actually, so fun story. I've talked about it actually quite a bit, or at least a while ago on my channel. I was actually hired to be a Fun Squad activity host with Carnival Cruise Line. And some of you know Justin, that's been on this channel quite a few times. He did an internship on the Triumph, and he was in the kids club. He was like a kids club person in there, but I think he lasted like a whole 2 weeks. And if you guys know us, him and I are very, very similar people. So I think for him not liking it at all, I think, and it was only like a 2-month internship for him, but it was like a full-time 6-month contract for me, that I was like, this probably won't be a thing for me. I probably should continue on getting, and again, I would have to drop out of college if I were to start with Carnival too, which is, I think, one of the big things that kept me from doing it. I would love to work for Carnival Corporation or Carnival Cruise Line someday. I know I had a couple internships. I was actually several interviews into the interview process for some internships down in Miami at their headquarters before all this started. But, you know, everything shut down. Everybody got laid off with Carnival. And so that internship really didn't happen, even though I never really got like an official answer. I kind of just, once I saw the shutdown starting, I was like, I'm not getting this. So, although I had a really good feeling about it, though. But I did just start working for Philips and their healthcare industry, and Philips does offer some really good vacation time, so I'll probably just stick around with them for quite a while, you know, and cruise as much as possible. So I like that question. I get asked that a lot, but I would love to work for a cruise line one day. But I think for now, it'll probably just be a regular job and, you know, cruise as much as possible. I was at Disney Hotel for a few days ago. They only allowed one family in each elevator. That will be a challenge on a cruise ship. Yeah, I could see that as a challenge on a ship. That would be, I mean, especially on something like the Oasis class ships with Royal Caribbean. I mean, that's a lot of people. Even though some of these ships are going to be at half capacity, so it's kind of, I guess it's going to be a give and take. It's going to be strange how they do things. I think they could do it. I think it's just going to be it's going to be a little bit of work, or it's going to be a lot of work actually, on how they get things done. But I think the cruise lines can do it, and I definitely think the elevators actually could raise a bit of a challenge. Definitely the piano guy in the elevator on Royal Caribbean ships, that definitely is not going to come around for a little bit longer. What else? But I personally always take the stairs because I just overall. I got to work off the food that I'm eating all week on the cruise anyway, so like I'd rather take the stairs, but that's a very good point about the elevators. Wendy says those two ships I mentioned for P&O are at so in Crete, getting sold over there at the moment. Interesting. Have you heard? Let me know. Have you heard where they're being sold to? Because I know again they're supposed to go to CMV, but I really don't know what their plans are since CMV is really pretty much no longer a thing, unless they get some money and they're still able. Because they technically, I guess, haven't filed bankruptcy, but they're in administration, so it's pretty much like they're trying to sell as many ships as possible. So I really don't know how their future is gonna be for them. Spaz asked, Brandon, have you ever sailed over to Alaska? I would love to. I have always wanted to sail to Alaska. That's definitely high on my list. I think now, especially now that they're sending the mega ships over there, I would love to go over to Alaska. And I think because this year they were supposed to have the Bliss, the Joy, the Ovation, and a couple other ships, like regular sized ships. And then, there's next year they're going to have the Quantum of the Seas is going to come over from Asia. She's going to join the Ovation over in Alaska as well. And then you got the Encore that's going to go over to Alaska as well as the Bliss. And then each of those cruise lines also have their medium-sized ships that are going to be there as well. I think Norwegian's going to have, I think, the Sun, and I think the Jewel, and I think something else. I believe Norwegian's going to have about 5 ships in Alaska next year, if things still continue or they still actually go through. But I know the Royal Caribbean still got 2 Radiance class ships as well over there. So I would definitely really love to do Alaska. That's been very high on my list. I think it was kind of right underneath the Panama Canal, which I did the Panama Canal a couple of years ago, and that was incredible. But I'm definitely not much of a cold weather person either, so Alaska has kind of been very hesitant for me at the same time. But I think, and as a experienced cruiser and a frequent cruiser, I think you have to kind of do Alaska at least once, from what I've heard from other people. And it's kind of what I told other people, because I've seen videos, I've seen everything that goes on in Alaska, and it really looks incredible. And I think it's definitely an experience every passionate cruiser, every frequent cruiser needs to do at least once. Let's see. Is P&O Cunard owned by an American Carnival or Carnival PLC UK? Even though they're flagged in the UK and Bermuda, it's only the port of registry. Or P&O Princess. So actually, I believe Carnival Corporation owns Cunard, but I know originally it was P&O Princess PLC until they merged with Carnival Corporation, and then they just kind of fell under the Carnival Corporation name. But as far as I know, I believe technically the Princess operates, Princess Cruises, P&O Cruises, and then P&O Australia, which is why a lot of their older ships or older Princess ships usually go into the P&O and P&O Australia fleet. But I believe Cunard technically is owned by Carnival Corporation in the U.S. That's a good question. That's actually that's a tough question. I'm pretty sure Cunard is flagged or under the Carnival Corporation U.S. Spaz asks, how would the buffet work on a cruise ship? That's a great question. That's actually something I am most excited about when I saw what they're doing on MSC. So what MSC is doing is, if you've ever walked into the buffet, got the little hallway. So what they've done on the Grandiosa, and I wish I had like a video to like show you guys how they're doing this. But as you walk in, they've got a couple crew members standing around in the entrance, and there's little cutouts where there's one sink, and there's like I think 6 or 7 different bays of one individual sink, and they're in a cutout, so you're not going to be next to somebody washing your hands, which is plays into the social distancing thing. So I really liked that they did that. I mean, that's very, that shows like they're willing to adapt and something, But then as you wash your hands, you walk in, you go into the front of the line of the buffet, and there's a crew member also standing there as well, he's handing you individual trays, so you're not picking something up off of a stack that 100 people have already touched. So one person is handing you a tray instead of grabbing something off a stack, which is again helping their situation a little bit more. And then how they have those little like glass awnings covering the food, they've got like glass covering from like the bottom of those awnings down to the where the food is, and that keeps people from reaching in and grabbing the food like with their hands or anything like that. There's no self-service, I guess, if you want to call it that. So instead of grabbing the tongs, picking up your food, putting it on your plate, you say, hey, I want that, and then somebody on the other side will hand you the food, and then he kind of like reaches over the top and hands it to you, which I hope that stays around. I actually was like, seeing some of the things that they're doing with the buffet is something I actually really hope stays around, because I never really liked, it was kind of like part of a buffet. I mean, you do it everywhere, but I think part of the buffet is you touch a pair of tongs, you grab your food, put it down, and next person does the same thing, but 100 people are touching that pair of tongs, and those tongs are also touching your food. So that's something that like always kind of threw up a question mark to me, and I really like the fact that they're doing that, and I hope something like that stays to where they self-serve. And every now and then on a ship, it really depends, and I think there's reasons they do it randomly. But sometimes on a ship, like halfway through a cruise, they'll start serving it. The crew will start serving it instead of you grabbing the tongs. So I know they did that. They switched that about halfway through my cruise on the Bliss. About a week into the cruise, they started like you weren't allowed in to the buffet without washing your hands, and then you weren't able to like serve yourself. You had to have somebody like hand you the food. So things like that I really hope stick around. And that also goes to show, like I just said with the Bliss, that was 2 years ago. That was in 2018 in the spring. So this is long before everything that's going on right now, and they were already doing things that a lot of places are doing right now to say, oh yeah, we're doing our part in keeping things clean. I'm like, the cruise lines have been doing a lot of this stuff for years. Disney's got all sorts of like hand washing stations around the place, hand sanitizers all over the place. I know when I went to Universal a couple months ago, like, oh yeah, here's you couldn't get on the ride without hand sanitizer. You couldn't, you needed hand sanitizer. You needed to wipe stuff down, all sorts of stuff like that. Like, in my head, I was like, this is nothing different than what cruise lines have been doing for quite a while now, for at least as long as I could remember. So I think that's another thing for the cruise lines. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that they'd be implementing as far as, setting sail safely, quote unquote, a lot of that stuff they've been doing for a long time. So I definitely think they're going to be able to like adapt to things like that, and it's going to be very easy for them. George asks, do I have any cruises booked? Not right now. I'm looking at several different things, but I definitely am going to try to get on something soon. I know I was looking at the Celebrity Apex for February. I did not book that officially yet, though. I'm definitely looking at it. I'd like to do the Mardi Gras since I was canceled on that. I would be going on the Mardi Gras in November for Thanksgiving if it weren't for the delay. I was supposed to be on the Symphony as well earlier this year as well, so that kind of stinks. But yeah, I definitely need to get something booked soon. I think the reason I haven't booked anything yet is the fact that I'm waiting more of, I want to make sure cruise lines get back into service first before I book something, just because I don't want to go through a whole cancellation process again, because that's just never fun. But I think now that I can kind of have a sense and have a feel that, I think cruise lines are going to come back very soon, I'm definitely starting to look again. So I may book something in the near future. Let's see. George says, I totally have seen the disgusting stuff happen at a buffet. Yeah. Jack says Sun, Jewel, Bliss, and Encore are scheduled for Alaska cruises next year. Thank you. So yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, there's a lot of ships. There's just from Norwegian and Royal Caribbean alone, there's a lot of ships in Alaska next year. And I think I mentioned this in a video I did about the Quantum coming over. I think Alaska has a ship for literally every type of cruiser. Holland America's got a lot of ships over there in Alaska for the summers. Princess has a lot of ships there in the summer. Carnival sends a ship up there. Some people are very loyal to Carnival, and so they don't sail anything but Carnival. So if Carnival's going to send the Freedom up there, which is their largest full season ship up there in Alaska, which is really cool. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of ships up in Alaska very soon. It's crazy that seeing so many ships there, because it used to be a very small, it's small, very small feel or small community type of thing for cruising in Alaska. The no muster drill, I feel like they're going to modify the muster drills a little bit, definitely to comply with the social distancing. Buffet food being served by employees is definitely a really good thing. I agree. Do I believe that it's true that cruise lines will require purchasing an excursion to get off the ship when cruising resumes? To start out with, yes. I think that's pretty much why they let people off on MSC and Costa right now, is if you have an excursion booked, which it's a good thing and a bad thing. It kind of stinks that you can't go off and do your own thing, but given the situation, it's what we have to do. But at the same time, I think there's going to be some ports, you don't really want to get off anyways. But overall, I do think that cruise lines are going to require purchasing an excursion, at least for the first few months, until they can try to get a real feel of how everything's going at first. But anyways, so I've pretty much been on about an hour now, so I'm gonna wrap it up. I really appreciate you guys coming in. I do apologize for the late start, and this has been really fun answering your guys' question, kind of talking about what our thoughts are on the cruise industry going forward. Anyways, so I'm gonna try to do this on a weekly basis. I'm gonna try to do maybe every Sunday at 8:00, see if that works, or maybe change it up just a little bit, depending on how things go. But yeah, that's going to be all for today's live stream. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll see you guys next week in next week's live stream.